Elden Ring Nightreign. FromSoft's latest release, and unlike all their previous single-player focused experiences, Nightreign is a co-op Souls-like extraction shooter, roguelike, open-world action RPG with sexual content. Now, there's enough buzzwords to make any executive board meeting all cream themselves simultaneously, but to put it simply, this is Elden Ring's gameplay reimagined into a co-op roguelike. And also, this game isn't directed by Michael Zaki and has been instead directed by a new face, Junya Ishizaki. It's for these reasons that many longtime fans went into Nightreign extremely skeptical, and while these concerns are pretty valid, I can say, for the most part, Elden Ring Nightreign is peak. I've been hooked ever since Nightreign release, continuing to play even after reaching the credits. This means I got a lot to say. A lot of positive, but also a lot of negative, but you know, we're gonna try and be as constructive as possible here, because I know Junya is definitely watching this and taking notes. I see you, Junya. Add more Dark Souls bosses. Also, give Recluse a bikini skin. If you want my resume before continuing the video, I got roughly 300-ish hours in Elden Ring, and I've beat DS1, DS3, and Liza P. If this seems, you know, lacking for a Souls fan doing a review video, you are completely correct. Yeah, there are plenty of other people who are probably way more capable of giving a better review. However, I think I make up with that with my collection. Yeah, some pretty awesome stuff here, huh? Anyway, that's enough blabbering. Nightreign review. Talk about good, talk about bad. Let's do this thing. So for these videos, I usually like talking about the story first, because the story is usually the most interesting or important aspect of the game, and I also usually just have a lot to say about it. However, this is a FromSoft game, and usually the gameplay takes the forefront. Souls-likes, well, at least the good ones, always have such intricate, deep gameplay while also putting a large emphasis on level design, which is not really relevant here now that I'm thinking about it, but let's continue. So, as we established before, Nightreign has plenty of buzzwords to make any IGN reviewer wet at the scene, but the game, at its core, is an Elden Ring roguelite. Roguelite, meaning you get some form of permanent buffs, which, in terms of Nightreign, are these coloured crystals. So, these are completely random slots that you can get that apply to your character that give varying buffs. Anywhere from, you know, extra strength, getting buffs when statuses pop, or even getting 50 runes when you drop 30 meters, spin 3 times in a row, and gotta stomp a zombie. Sadly, 90% of these crystals are just completely worthless, as they either A, not give enough buffs, or B, give too many varying buffs so they don't fit the build, or C, the more likely answer, are just outperformed by the unique crystals. These are rewarded from character quests, which we'll talk about later, but these offer unique passive bonuses to specific character abilities, and these buffs are pretty substantial, like Wilder's ult leaving a fire AoE on the ground, and like I said, they're almost too good. Why would I ever run the spin 3 times and hit a zombie when I can have the Wilder buff? And you can look at this in 2 ways. One, they incentivize doing the side content to unlock them, but on the other side, they sorta hurt build diversity, as once you've unlocked them, you're never going to really take them off, are you? And while Nightreign does have build diversity in other places, having a more fleshed out and customizable permanent progression system would have gone a long way for the game's longevity. Okay, let's talk about the things we attach these crystals to, being the playable characters, and me being completely genuine, these characters are probably just a highlight of Nightreign. We got 7 completely fleshed out, diverse characters that all play completely different and are also just incredibly fun, each having their own unique weapon movesets as well. These characters are Wilder, Guardian, Iron Eye, Duchess, Revenant, Recluse, and Executioner. Yep, that's all the characters in the game. Haven't missed one, definitely not ignoring one that is incredibly poorly designed in every aspect and is incredibly less fun to play than every other character. Nope, not in the slightest. However, if this character did happen to exist, let's talk about his features that would make him miserable to play. Again, this is all completely hypothetical. So this character, he has an ability that does 0 damage and locks you in a long animation. It is only good if you take massive amounts of hits, which is very likely to happen as this guy's custom moveset is dog water, with charge attacks that have the longest windup in the world and extend not just to colossal weapons, but also great hammers and great axes, all being the exact types of weapons this hypothetical character wants to solely use. And also, don't get me started on this ult, which is genuinely, majority of the time, causing more harm to your team rather than assisting them. Thankfully, FromSoft didn't include a character this poorly designed in the game, so we don't have to worry about that. We only have to worry about the 7 that are in the game, and these guys are just fantastic. I could talk about them all individually, but I feel like I would be repeating myself a lot, because I pretty much only have positive things to talk about. They all follow pretty stereotypical Elden Ring builds, since you can't distribute stats yourself, being your keen scaling, your tank, intelligence and faith users, yada yada, and all their abilities perfectly complement their desired playstyles. Also, all their character designs are just superb, they're extremely diverse, and they also have very strong silhouettes, meaning you'll never get one Nightfarer confused for another, which is extremely important in fast-paced gameplay. In case you're curious, Wilder, aka John Nightreign, aka
Kaboom? Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
is easily my favourite. I think his grappling hook and his powerful AoE explosion fit so nicely in the Nightreign gameplay loop. But this is what makes the game poggers. I just have that in my script. This is what makes the game poggers, is that everyone has their own favourite character, and anyone in the community can understand exactly why this character is your favourite, as long as you don't bring up the heretic. I hope these more thought out and constructed characters are something that FromSoft continue to experiment with, as these guys' character skills are going to be one of the only things that's going to feel sorely missed when I return to regular Elden Ring. That and the Surge Sprint, but the Surge Sprint does trivialize a lot of the bosses, so I completely understand that not being in the base game. The only thing I really want to see out of the character mechanic is alternative abilities to pick from. Many roguelites offer similar abilities to replace the existing one, and this just helps with diversity between runs. I feel like it would help a lot with diversity in Nightreign just overall. Also, just more characters. The 7 we got are already so good, so just getting more on their level would generate a significant chunk of gameplay. So obviously, talking about the Elden Ring side of things, the game is, to no one's surprise, extremely fun. This is due to the absolute superb base the game gets to build off of. The roguelite elements, however, are where the most of the controversy stem from. We already talked briefly about this with the relic system, but let's talk about the meat and potatoes of this, being the map itself, Limveld. This is where majority of gameplay happens, and only in Limveld. There are 0 other maps currently in the game, and this sadly hurts the game quite a bit. As while the terrain changes sometimes due to shifting earth events, most runs still end up feeling quite similar. Points of interest and bosses, while randomized, always spawn in the exact same spot still, so the routes you take during a run feature quite a lot of overlap. The points of interest themselves though are quite fun to explore as a new player, and they're really satisfying to learn how to complete efficiently as you get better at the game. Like many of the roguelike elements, I just wish there were more points of interest to help with diversity. FromSoft has made some attempts to make Limveld less Limveldy, and that's with the shifting earth events I mentioned before. These replace a big chunk of Limveld with an instance environment with, varying degrees of success. So there's 4 of these events, and let's talk about them in reverse order you unlock them in. Nokoteo, the Shrouded City, and the Rotted Woods are both incredibly fun. The general goal of these environments is to reach the end / goal and receive a buff completely unique to the environments. Beating Estelle in Nokoteo giving you a revive, and finding the flower in the woods giving you a Bloodborne rally mechanic. Nokoteo is particularly fun to explore as it's just a new Elden Ring Legacy dungeon, and as we established before, most of the Elden Ring stuff is extremely fun. What is not fun, however, is the Mountaintops event. This one features weak bosses that don't give good rewards, as well as a tanky ass boss, and it's a frost dragon that's at the peak that just constantly frostbites you, and a reward that gives you resistance to frost. Not resistant, like the rot forest gives you, just resistance. So this area is just unfun to explore, has bad bosses, and gives you a reward that is only actually useful on 1 out of the 8 final Night Lord bosses. Just a big ol' thumbs down from me. I will be honk sure sleeping on that thing whenever this event is active. Now, for the final Shifting Earth, the crater, I just wish I had some gameplay of this event, or I could just actually talk about it, but I have never actually explored this area, which brings me to talk about my problems with the Shifting Earth mechanic, that there is no way to get them other than chance. As I said, you can sleep to get rid of them, but after that, it is complete chance to get them again. So the only time I got the crater event was when it first unlocked, and since my team and I were still just little fledgling Nightfarers, we died the first day both attempts, and it disappeared after that. And in my 40 hours of gameplay afterwards, I haven't once, not once, gotten it again. So I literally just cannot comment on the experience because I haven't played it. My second issue is with, I know I'm repeating myself again, the lack of variety when these events are active. So for whatever reason, for these Shifting Earth events, there's like 2 randomized seeds for each one. So if you run 2 of the same Shifting Earth events back to back, chances are your run will not just be similar, but it will be exactly the same. Like 1 for 1, like as identical every new FIFA game is to the previous one. Another roguelike element FromSoft has introduced is a chance for the Night Lords to randomly invade you throughout runs. These are very welcome and drastically change your routing in a run. Pretty much whenever you're invaded by these guys, you need to deal with them instantly, otherwise your run is pretty much doomed. I wish there were more of these little events that influence your decision making within a run. There's also a chance you can get invaded by Morgoth, and this one is completely random. And even though he can sometimes absolutely destroy you, it's incredibly fun, and I wish there were invades for every Shardbearer boss. Like, imagine this, a Millennia raid. That'd be fun as shit, no? Anyways, while we're talking about bosses, let's talk about the bosses you can find in Limveld. Not the actual Night Lord final bosses, just the ones you can find throughout a run in day 1 and 2. And this is honestly my biggest issue with the game. There is not enough boss variety. This is the most repetitive aspect of the game, as even though Elden Ring has an absolute enormous amount of bosses, as well as the game taking some bosses from the Dark Souls series, there is not even close to enough variety with the bosses present in Nightreign. You honestly see all the bosses within the first 10 hours of gameplay, which, I don't need to tell you, hurts replayability a lot. I also don't know what the devs are thinking, but most of the bosses they take from Elden Ring are the bad ones, like Ulcerated Tree Spirit, Royal Revenants, Falling Star Beast, Red Wolf, Heroes of Maw, and fucking Ancient Dragon. What masochist brought this failure of a boss back? Why are none of the Remembrance bosses here other than Morgoth and Godric? And to the people who say Elden Ring has no good bosses other than the Remembrances. Fair, then why didn't they take more bosses from the Dark Souls series? There's only 6 in the game: Gaping Dragon, Centipede Demon, Dux de Freya, Smelter Demon, Boreal Dancer, and Nameless King, but these guys are all amazing, especially Nameless King. So why didn't they take more bosses? There's so many to pick from: Solar Cinder, Yorm, Abyss Watchers, Champion Gundyr, Torius, Manus, Ornstein and Smo, Flexile Sentry, Ruined Sentinel. I don't know any more DS2 bosses that aren't early game. Scorpioness Nudgeka? Also, there's zero Shadow the Erdtree stuff in Nightreign, except the fuck-ass Golden Hippo. Why? Out of everything to add, that's what you guys put in? Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that out of all the field bosses in Limveld, like, 20% are actually good fights, like 30% of them are just straight up awful, and the rest in between are sort of just, well, mid. But this is a very solvable issue. They literally have the bosses, they just need to import them, add an AoE move or 2 for them, and boom, game good. Obviously, I know it's not that simple, but it's definitely not impossible, and they've shown they can do it, so hopefully future updates will add more bosses with it. I have never wanted a game to be live service more than Nightreign, because if they genuinely listen to feedback, this game can go from very good to just absolute cinema. I will say a positive to end this little segment is the end of night bosses, at least the ones with the brand new moves, they're usually pretty damn fun, like Draconic Tree Sentinel and, I can't believe I'm saying this, Godskin Duo. Yep, Godskin Duo is an actually fun fight in this game. I can't believe it either, to be honest. So before we wrap up this segment by talking about the Night Lords, I want to talk about group and solo play. So before you embark on your heroic and dangerous journey throughout Limveld, you can choose to adventure with a party of 3 or tackle the battle on your lonesome. Yeah, so you can play the game as solo and trio, and I've played extensively with both, and I'm happy to say that both are extremely fun. I don't know how much I would recommend playing the game solo straight out of the gate, because at the end of the day, there is a somewhat steep learning curve at the start, and the Night Lords and also just the game in general is designed around 3 players. But however, there are some systems in place that help solo feel good, with enemy AI playing extremely passive if the player is already fighting someone, or in an update they did after launch that gave solo players more runes and revives. Nightreign does though, now that I think about it, have quite a small target audience, because while I don't recommend playing this game solo from the start, I don't know how much I can recommend playing trios with 2 randoms as well. I played trios with 1 friend most of the time when we didn't have a full squad, so we always had a random, and while some of these guys were absolute gamers, for example Cheddar, an absolute goat on the scene, majority of these guys are pretty casual gamers and mediocre at the game, with some absolute stinkers that stand out. Now, before I make fun of this guy, in his defense, this was day 1 release, so he might have been slightly inexperienced, but anyway, this is Small Slow Bro, and I'm just gonna let the clip speak for itself. So yeah, with that, there needs to be some way of better communication, I think. And I think there's a multitude of things they can do to improve this experience with randoms. Like, let's just say a ping wheel with specific commands on it, and maybe voice chat. Honestly, I've been thinking about it, and I think I'm on the side of no voice chat. Because, yeah, it would be cool if there was like voice chat in the game and you meet someone really chill and he's like really good at the game, and then you keep playing with this random, become friends, yada yada. But realistically, voice chat with randoms would just be an incredibly toxic environment, especially in a Souls-like game. So it's probably just better for the game overall that it doesn't have it. But any form of improved communication I would have taken, because right now all you can do is ping on the map, and while there actually is a way to also ping items on the ground, of course, this wasn't in the tutorial, and I have seen 1 random player ever actually ping an item on the ground for me. 1. It doesn't help that most randoms as well are just blind, either not looking at your pings or just deciding to go off and do their own thing. We had a run where on the second day, the random decided to not follow our ping and just go do their own thing, so me and my friend had to fight day 2 bosses by ourselves while he was, just off doing his own thing. However, while that was extremely frustrating, yeah, we ended up defeating the Night Lord boss with him anyway, and it wasn't just any boss, it was actually the final boss as well. So while the game definitely isn't impossible with a useless random, it's just more so annoying. So for the final section of the gameplay part of the video, we need to talk about the Night Lords, the final bosses at the end of every run. And I know I said the characters were the highlight of Nightreign, but these guys are pretty dang close. 8 Night Lords are in the game, and 6 of these are genuinely really fun and enjoyable fights, with the other 2 being less good. Still, 75% success rate, I will more than happily take that. To talk about the 2 I don't like, these guys are more so just incredibly boring to fight rather than just being bad fights. Especially Augur, this floaty blue thing that does nothing but just float around and occasionally land so you can get a hit in. And yes, I know you can kill the jellyfish and tentacles and still do damage to him, but this doesn't make the fight any more entertaining now, does it? At least Nosta is visually absolutely stunning. Honestly, all of them except Augur are extremely cinematic, which is very impressive since none of these guys actually have cutscenes. With these fights being so cinematic, the sense of achievement you get when you defeat them is just unlike any Souls game before, especially when you're in a full party. When you and two friends are versing a boss and you're coming with each other like it's a Final Fantasy XIV raid, there's just nothing like it, man. Comparing these bosses to an MMO raid is a very accurate comparison in my opinion though, with many of them having moves that are both single target and also AoE, so doing things like taking aggro and then calling out attacks is very appropriate here. Especially with the revive system Nightreign has, being able to hit your ally once they die to revive them. This is a fabulously designed system. It allows for a lot of optimism, being able to hit both allies at once if they manage to crawl next to each other, or being able to hit the boss and your ally at the same time. The only thing the system really needs to be perfect is for the revive bar not to reset past the segments. It's really stupid in my opinion if your ally's on free bars and you're hitting them and you just manage to not get them up and then they just reset all the way back to full. Just not very fun, doesn't feel good. Going back to the Night Lords though, while they are designed around trios, they are completely doable and also enjoyable to do solo. If you want a more accurate comparison, many of these guys feel extremely on par with a late game boss in Dark Souls 3, in terms of both difficulty and aggressiveness. I think this level of difficulty works perfectly for Nightreign, with massive openings for attacks while also dealing enough damage and having varying movesets so they don't feel like complete pushovers. Heelster, the final boss, is also an amazing fight and such a satisfying end to the game, taking all the design philosophies of the previous fights into his. He gives off major Soul of Cinder vibes, which is an incredible thing if you ask me. I know this is very high praise I'm about to give, but doing these fights with friends is some of the most fun I've ever had in any multiplayer game ever. This sort of sums up Nightreign in general. A lot of weird and underbaked design choices, but when this game works, good god does this game work well. You go grab a dictionary, look up the word potential, and there's a picture of Nightreign right there. It's got the core gameplay of Elden Ring with its extensive set of weapons and spells, with an absolutely massive pool of bosses to pick from, and with a bit more polish to some of the roguelite elements. God, I feel like J. Jonah Jameson and that one kid from Whiplash, watching him, Whiplash? I don't know, I don't really watch movies. The only videos I watch are just videos of Recluse and Duchess Scissor. So FromSoft games are usually quite unique in their approach to the story, being more focused on the lore of their worlds, what has happened, before you begun playing, with your character's story being only a little segment in the overall world. However, Nightreign is definitely a lot more involved with its story compared to something like Elden Ring. Nightreign, for its most part, has a start and also an end.
Alright, Leaflet, for 1 million runes, all you have to answer is this simple question.
Oh man, Mr. Trappinge.
My name is Billy.
I'm pretty nervous about this question. That last one was pretty hard.
That question wasn't hard, you're just fucking stupid. Your question is, which of the following is how a Souls game starts? Is it A, the main character finds himself in an unknown area? B, a lady shrouded in mystery guiding you? C, getting your ass kicked by the starting boss? Or D, all of the above?
I know the answer, Mr. Trappinge.
My name is still Billy.
It's gotta be D. Whoa!
So yeah, you can definitely tell this is a FromSoft game. It's got that certain charm to it that From do so well. But the reason I say this game has a more cohesive story than something like the Soulsborne games is that the entirety of the story is in Nightreign. The massive lore of the game is the lore of Elden Ring, so what we get here is the complete package. So the narrative revolves around all the playable characters, dubbed not the Tarnished but instead Nightfarers, and it's the Nightfarers' jobs to defeat the Night Lords, powerful entities who are trying to feed off the energy of the Erd Tree, thus, in the process, destroying the tree. Obviously, this would be pretty bad, because this game, I think, takes place before Elden Ring, so the lands between right now are a pretty awesome place to be. What with all the racism and war and the slaughter and the pillaging and... So wait, why do we want to save the lands between again? So of course, like any other FromSoft game, there are multiple endings that convey different things, but let's hold out on that for a second, because there's actually more storylines happening throughout the game, and that's with our beloved Nightfarers. All 7 of them. Now, I feel like I've let you guys down as a reviewer, but I have not completed all the character stories yet. Yes, I know, shame me, but I still feel like I've experienced enough of them to where I feel comfortable to form an opinion on them, and that opinion is a good one. Looking at the narrative side of these storylines, called Remembrances, these are pretty special, charming, sometimes downright depressing, and even terrifying. We'll get into that last one in a bit, but to mansplain this a bit further, these stories are the lore for each character, hence the name Remembrance, cause it's about the past. I think. There's a lot of I thinks here, cause the game isn't exactly stellar at explaining what the fuck is even happening most of the time, but hey, that gives the community something to talk about at least, right? These quests are more so the reason each Nightfarer is at the round table. Whether it be the Wilder and Duchess's concern for one another and their eventual discovery of their bloodline relation and their quest to save one another, to the Guardian retelling his traumatic experience and losing his wings, the Executor wanting to see the Erdtree again, and the Revenants... Oh boy, we'll get into that. But the process is usually start Remembrance, talk with Roundtable inhabitants, go out into Limveld, get quest item, return, and complete the chapter of their Remembrance. Now, I have a big problem with completing these story events, and it's the going out in Limveld bit. That itself isn't the problem, it's the fact that in a party of 3 people, only 1 person is allowed to have their quest active at once. How stupid is that? Why should only 1 person get to do their quest while the others don't? That ain't fair. They really should have either buckled down on this and allowed everyone access to their quest during an expedition, or the reverse and have no quests be in Limveld and the quests are specifically only boss fights or dungeons for single player, something that is done in multiple Remembrance chapters already, by the way. At the very least, if 2 or 3 of you are playing the same character and on the same Remembrance, everyone should be able to complete the quest, not just the host. It's this clunkiness with completing Remembrances that leads to a lot of people just not bothering at all, which really sucks because these storylines are actually, as I said, quite good, and you also get insane rewards for doing them, and it feels like the solution to this problem is really quite simple. Like, FromSoft thought of the most unintuitive way for the system to work and then executed that flawlessly. You always have the option of just playing solo to get your Remembrance done as well, but the issue with that is if you just want to go in and do the quest and that's it, you can't end the run early. The fastest way to end your run after speedrunning your Remembrance quest is to die twice to the end of day boss, not just dying in general, which by the way takes a long time, so all around it's just annoying. So anyways, a pretty standard starter game from FromSoft with quite varied and entertaining quests, but now we need to talk about the endings. But before that, we need to talk about the end of the Revenant quest, because this is unlike anything we've seen in a Soulsborne game before. I'm going to quickly show the cutscene, and if you've already seen it, skip here so we can talk about it, and if you don't want story spoilers for any endings in the game, too bad, I'm talking about them anyway. Alright, sit back and enjoy. What the fuck was that, man? You and the development team cooked up that absolutely terrifying cutscene. The scene where the dad is like towering over the daughter, to the daughter getting sprayed in blood, just the visuals and the audio design and everything. I can tell you the last time I felt this uncomfortable tense while playing a game. It is the sort of stuff they can make for a roguelite. Can you imagine what the cutscenes are going to be like in Duskbloods? This was easily a highlight of the game for me, and it shows me that FromSoft definitely still has it. Let's just maybe check in on the developer who led the creation of the storyline. And maybe their family as well. Okay, let's talk endings now. There are 4 in total, but we're really only going to talk about 2 of them. To touch upon the other 2, one of them is where Iron Eye, instead of ending the night, continues it for his own gain. The other one is the recluse embracing a child. I think that's hers, or was hers. Anyway, these are fine, just not much to talk about really. Because, you know, they're just pretty straightforward. I want to talk about the last 2, starting with the basic bitch end, where you beat Heolster, enter the Grayed Out Round Table, and complete the night. Now, I haven't actually looked at any, Nightreign, all endings and lore explained, but I think I got the gist of it. So, Limfeld is a separate realm that exists because the Night Lords are feeding off the energy of the Erdtree. And there's multiple of these realms, with each of these big shadowy figures walking in the distance being, one of these separate realms. Each realm has a safe space where a keeper is chosen, and this keeper has to recruit warriors to battle the Night Lord. Sadly, the keepers disappear with the realm when we defeat the Night Lord, as they are bound to it. But once the Night Lords are defeated, there's no reason for the realm to feed off the Erdtree, so it just materializes and leaves. This is just my interpretation of the ending, as again, much of the story in FromSoft games is sort of vague and leaves a lot of blanks for the player to fill in, but you can usually always get the general vibe they were going for. It's a very solemn ending, and while I like it, I can definitely get it if people don't like it. It's a very vague ending, especially straight after the spectacle that is Heolster, and longtime fans are usually used to endings that are just a little bit fucked up, which is where our last ending comes in, the conclusion to Wilder's Remembrance. So as I said before, the Wilder and Duchess quests are very interlinked, with Duchess learning that Wilder, due to depression and PTSD, he will end his own life after he's finished defeating the Night Lord, and Wilder, learning that Duchess will disappear along with the realm when the Night Lords are all defeated, wants to find a way to circumvent this. They also find that they are long lost siblings, separated from each other quite a time beforehand. Wilder, not having a care about his own livelihood, goes to the utmost extreme to save his sister. First, he goes to Nocleteo and acquires a larval tear. Then, after beating Heolster, instead of ending the night, he uses the larval tear to rebirth himself as none other than Heolster himself, taking the place of the Night Lord so the realm continues on, and thus allows the Duchess to survive. This is the sort of shit that Souls-like fans will live for, an ending shrouded in mystery that leaves a lot of discussion for the community. The relation between Duchess and Wilder is just downright depressing though. The fact that you can only save one and not the other, there's just no happy endings in FromSoft games, and don't you ever forget that. Not that they've ever done anything to give you the impression that there would be a happily ever after. Like, does anything about this look happy to you? Anyways, looking solely at just the narrative itself and not how you interact with it, I think FromSoft cooked here. It's nice to see that even with a game that clearly had a different direction from their mainline games, as well as a team of developers that are a lot less experienced with game design, the story beats in Nightreign range from pretty good to some of the most memorable moments within the entire series. Even though the remembrances can be sort of annoying to clear, I definitely recommend them and I will definitely continue to complete them. Visuals, music, character design, environments, how high poly the woman's bare feet are. These are all the things I mean when I say aesthetics. Basically, how good does the game look and sound? Now, obviously, Nightreign's predecessor Elden Ring is one of the prettiest games of all time, with Shadow the Erdtree kicking this up to 11, playing with colours and verticality amazingly. I am happy to say though, that visually, Nightreign also looks spectacular. With an asterisk on that spectacular, but we'll get into that. Let's start with the good. Limfeld obviously looks really cool. It's quite grand in size, with many similarities with Limgrave and Weeping Peninsula. The shifting earth events all look good as well, especially the Rotted Woods and Nocleteo. These places feel especially grand and unique. And speaking of grand, let's look at the area before each Night Lord. Oh, just look at that, man. This vista is easily at least a 9 out of 10 on the awesome scale. I will say though, it does suck a bit that the boss arena for each night is the exact same, but you actually don't feel it as much since these big open deserts act as a canvas to add a bunch of different things to, which it successfully do by the way. Each boss arena feels completely unique to that boss. We also, while we're talking about bosses, have to talk about them themselves, as while I may not like them all mechanically, they are also visually stunning. Each fight is a massive spectacle and it goes a long way with feeling accomplished when you defeat them. The boss themes are also incredible, all of them. A lot of Elden Ring boss themes are serviceable and good, but they're not really that memorable compared to something like Dark Souls 3. So the fact that all 8 Night Lords have incredible themes is just, wow, chef's kiss. Also, we have to talk about Healstar. This is one of, if not the coolest looking bosses in FromSoft history. Like, come on, he literally cuts the sky open. Him drawing powers from the other Night Lords as well as using the Moonlight Greatsword with the amazing theme, the amazing character design, just peak on peak on peak. Speaking of character designs, all the Nightfarers also have incredible designs with, and is a lot more impressive and important in scenes, very strong silhouettes. I know I talked about this earlier in the video, but I never once confused one of my teammates for a different character, even when looking at them from the corner of my eye. Also, I'm a really big fan of all their skins, especially the reference skins. These are just, they're so charming. I will say, I think it would have made a lot more lore sense that you unlock the Dusk and Dawn skins from defeating Healstar rather than vice versa, which is how it is now, but that's not really a big issue. What I do have an issue with is, again, the variety in environments. Not only is the gameplay lacking variety, but so is everything you see visually. I say visually, Limveld starts to get repetitive after 10 hours or so, and it's at this point they should introduce a completely new map. And yeah, this is sort of where they introduce shifting earths, but these just aren't nearly enough for the amount of variety a roguelike of this scale needs. Not to mention after their first appearance, shifting earths are just so incredibly sparse. Also, on Healstar, Limveld changes to like a golden hue rather than its normal green. And again, this helps a bit, and it should have been like this for every Night Lord, but at the end of the day, it's still Limveld, and Limveld gets pretty old pretty fast. In an ideal world, like I said, there should be a custom map for each individual Night Lord, or instead, one map inspired from each environment in Elden Ring. So we would have a Caelid inspired one, dear god, an Altus inspired one, and so on. And then the game randomly rotates between them. This might collide with the lore a little bit, but still, the lack of diversity in the game is easily my biggest problem. And I'm trying to offer solutions here, as I feel like it's easy to just criticize something without adding something constructive to the conversation. Let's move back to some of the positives though. I like how all the legendaries in this game look and feel, like they actually feel like legendaries compared to like Elden Ring. Roundtable Hold does a good job at feeling familiar while still looking different enough. Some of the environments made for the Remembrance quest look pretty neat, especially the Revenant one. The themes for returning Dark Souls bosses are all just as good as they did originally, especially Nameless King again. All the new VFX all look really good, like the closing fire circle, and some of the effects on the bosses when you get raided by them are really cool. Like, I know I rip on Augur a lot, but like, his like bubble that forms around you is actually a pretty cool effect. Overall, I am very happy with the visuals, especially all the Night Lords. As I've said, the Night Lords are just so cool and awesome, and just, I love the Night Lords so much. It's just, the issues I have are just the same ones I have with gameplay. It's just, I need more variety. I need them to be making some more attempts at variety to make each run feel more different. So to answer the question of the video title, is Elden Ring Nightreign peak? Short answer, yes. Long answer, it can be peak. Nightreign has some absolutely incredible aspects. Playable characters that replace the standard blank slate that possess abilities that are all incredibly fun, with final bosses that are a highlight across the entire series, and returning bosses from previous Souls games and Elden Ring that feature new and enjoyable movesets, paired alongside a story that is entertaining to engage with. However, for a roguelite game, Nightreign fails the #1 requirement, which is variety. Majority of runs blend together due to lack of a variety in environments, bosses, and forms of progression between runs. There's also a surprising lack of explanation and quality of life features that should be present. These issues though are not unsolvable, which is why my answer is it can be peak. And with a planned DLC later this year, that means we've got a few months of updates that can help circumvent some of these issues. Hopefully. Anyways, If you watched it all the way through, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun playing Nightreign, and I had even more fun making this video. And if you did make it this far, leave a comment on who your favourite Night Lord is. And with that, I've been Big Leaflet, and this was Elden Ring Nightreign, a review.